YouTube, how's it going? Welcome to the video, welcome to the channel. Guys, in this one, I am going to be responding to a little bit of hate that I've got on my recent video. Now, my recent video is literally just tailored. I built the video with the description, everything that's available in the description, purely so that, I don't know, maybe some kid in the UK actually gets a better PC for Christmas. The video was designed so that anyone that doesn't know much about PC hardware will know a way to get better performance for their money, or even save a little bit of money on similar performance hardware. That is all it was about. And because at this precise moment, for this price point, 12th gen is kind of a no-brainer and makes savings that needs to be made. Because of this, apparently I'm a scrub. Apparently I'm a scrub because the best options in the used market at the moment, with a level of warranty, with a level of security for people are not happy with just buying something from someone's back pocket around the back of McDonald's. For those people that want some security. So I tailored it so that there was literally platform lists that were all new products, and the two items that you can save money with in used products, the GPU and the CPU, both came with 5 years of warranty. There's not much more of an option. But two, coffee, 3816 here. They turn around and call me a scrub. I then respond to them, try to explain why 12th gen is the better option right now. So their response was, so you put together a list together based on warranty and not price to performance. No, I put a list together on price to performance. The warranty was just part of the option. In other words, basically, instead of paying maybe 20 quid less for said used item, I paid the 20 quid premium and got 5 years of warranty. That's what that is. It's not a price to performance. The list is tailored price to performance. The warranty is part of the package. The whole point is a list and products that people are going to feel safe buying. I'm trying to offer someone who does not know what they're picking, who would just literally blindly buy an OEM pre-built because they don't know what to buy or what products to buy. They don't know whether a 3070 is better than a 5700 XT. They don't know that. Whereas an AMD fanboy would probably be like, oh, you should buy the 5700 XT, when realistically you shouldn't, because that 5700 XT is like 60% lower than a 3070. But we'll get on to the GPUs and why I've chosen what I've chosen, and why the used market is basically what tailored that decision, not me, no fanboyism or anything like that. So he said that, I will address that, and once pointed out to him that it's actually cheaper to buy 12th gen and get the same performance as AM5, his response was £70 more for an upgrade for a path with 2+ gens. I would like to point out that all we know for sure, guaranteed, is there will be one more platform on AM5 as it stands. They have said that there is 2 more years, at least, at the minimum, that they're going to support the platform for. That does not mean that there's going to be a generation both of those years. The thing is, with tech at the minute, everything is slowing right down. There's not the big leaps in innovation anymore that we've seen a decade ago, where you are buying a GPU every year because you are literally gaining from that. That is not what's happening. So this video is literally tailored to just point out the research that I did, the decisions I made, why I made those decisions, why 12th gen is such a good option in this 550 to £1,000 market. Now, I would also, before we go into it, I would like to point out that anyone building a PC that is £1,100 or more should be building an AM5 platform. This is not me favoring Intel over AMD. This is not me favoring Nvidia over AMD. This is me offering you the best performance for your money at each price point that I've marked out in that video. But we will go through the CPUs that I've chosen, we will go through the GPUs that I've chosen, I'm going to stick with the majority of, actually no, we're going to go through them all. We're going to go through the GPUs that I've chosen. We are going to show you what is available in the same price point, in and around the same price point, as an alternative to the GPUs and CPUs that I have selected. I'm going to show you why I chose 12th gen and what the differences are between the three platforms, AM4, 12th gen and AM5. I'm going to show you what the differences are in price. I'm going to show you why I chose the GPUs that I chose. So how about it, Coffee? How about you just sit back, kick back, and learn something? Do you know what the biggest joke is? That this person went and put hate on my video, but didn't actually watch the video. All of the comments and hate are on the short that is advertising said video. They didn't actually go and have a look at the video. They didn't watch the video. They didn't took any information from that. They've literally just said, oh, seen Nvidia and Intel as options in the shorts. How are they offering more value than AMD? Because it fucking does. There's no hiding behind it. It just offers better fucking performance for your money. So we're gonna go through this. I'm going to show you why I chose the CPUs that I chose. I'm going to show you the differences in price between the three platforms, between DDR4 and DDR5, between the motherboards for all these platforms, and the price differences between the CPUs that match the CPUs that I have selected. We're going to go through all that, and I'm going to explain to you why I've made those decisions. And at the end of it, I will tell you why it is not worth, when you are sticking to a strict price point, it is not worth spending the other 70 quid on going AM5, because you spend that extra 70 quid there, you have to take it away somewhere else. And with the way I've tailored these, the only other place to take that away is the GPU. And I'm going to show you what happens if you take 70 quid off the price point of the GPU. So let's get into it, shall we? Let's go.
Right, okay. Coffee 3816. Hopefully you're sitting down comfortably, because this video here is for you. For anyone who's just stumbled across this video and wondering what the hell I'm going on about, I will link the build list video in the description, and I'll try and make it so that it's the video that gets suggested at the end of here. However, Coffee, as someone who didn't bother watching the video, just literally was reacting to the shorts, I'm going to address your comments. We're going to start with your first comment. Lol, Intel and Nvidia, stop being a scrub. How am I being a scrub? I'm just literally offering people the best performance for their money, option for their money, where they're going to get the best performance out of their money. You know how price to performance work? You do understand how price to performance works, right? So it's taking someone's budget and getting the best performance out of that bunch of money, right? We've got that. So we're clear. So first step, we're gonna have a look at DDR4. Now the DDR5 kit is 65 quid, right? Now what I do when choosing any RAM, doesn't matter whether it's DDR4, DDR5, are you paying attention, Coffee? Because you might learn something here, but like in something like part picker or anything, what you want to do is come down, and if you see first word latency or anything with nanoseconds next to it, this NS, right? You see that, what you want to do is you want to pull that slider down so it does not go over 10 nanoseconds. If you don't go over 10 nanoseconds on the first word latency, that means you get, it's like the butter zone. It's that sort of, for me, the sort of golden standard base point of RAM speeds. It doesn't matter how fast the RAM is, as long as it's 10 nanoseconds, and then you can look at making it faster. And then if you keep that cache latency obviously down and the speed goes up, that first word latency is going to come down, but 10 nanoseconds is as high as you want it to be. So maybe you can find a kit of RAM that's friggin' 15 nanoseconds like first word latency, and it's just slow ass garbage RAM, but it'll do the job. Go ahead. But for me, I would not recommend that anyone go over 10 nanoseconds on their RAM. That's how I gauge everything. That gives you that butter zone, you know, like 32 100 CL16. Over on DDR5, that's that 6000 CL30 point. Is that butter zone? Is that sort of golden standard for RAM, and that's more important than you chasing speeds and stuff like that. Uno momento. Right, sorry about that. My friend rang. She was boiling some eggs for her daughter, and one had a little crack in it. She got back to it and it looked like a cobweb had attacked her eggs, and she wondered whether it was okay. Anyways, right, obviously I told her it was fine. So anyways, back to the point. The point is, yes, there's this outlier of these Lexus errors, and they're a high speed. I'm guessing they're not hitting their speeds. That's why they've dropped in price, because they're not so popular, because they've not been hitting their speeds. But in general, you're paying about 50 quid for 16 gigs of DDR4 in a 2 gig kit. So there's 15 quid this side where you're saving going DDR4, although you have to remember it's half the bandwidth. It's basically the DDR5 can put double the throughput in the same lane, the same amount of lanes. I've got to stress on that. DDR5 is where the new standard is. DDR4 is the old standard, so you can still use it, but it kind of limits everything. Anyways, this is 50, so you're gonna get 15 quid there, right? Now these three motherboards are basically the same motherboard, just different generations. This is the AM4 one, this is the AM5 one, and this is the 12th gen one, right? So over on the AM4 one, one thing to note, it's only got two M.2 slots. You can see them there. There's one there, and there's one under the shield. So 2 M.2 supports. It is a little bit cheaper over here. So, and over on Intel side, you know, you're paying an extra, what, 16 quid. I worked out. There's another 16 quid. So it's basically you save £30 going DDR4 and on AM4 at this point, at the platform point. You save £30 on the platform, but you're on slower platform. You're on a platform that is going to limit stuff, because the slot in this is PCIe Gen 5. The RAM is DDR5. The storage is PCIe Gen 4, but it's still fast enough. Whereas over on this side, it's going to be, it's probably Gen 4, PCIe Gen 4 on the memory support. That's not an issue. But there's only 2, whereas over here you've got 4. So you've got one there, one there, one there, and one there. So you've got 4 M.2 supports on this board. But over on the M4 board, you've only got 2. You're on DDR4, which means you're limiting how fast your RAM really can go for you. You're on PCIe Gen 4. And in general, that's not, at the moment, it's not necessarily too much of an issue, because a lot of the cards are Gen 4 anyway. Like the cards that I suggested in the video are Gen 4. But if you get a card like, say, I'm not suggesting they're a good card, but say a card like the 5060 or the 5050, and they're 8 lanes of PCIe Gen 5, that's fast enough. And it's like having 16 lanes of PCIe Gen 4. However, if you put that into a Gen 4 system, that means you only get 8 lanes of Gen 4, which means you're basically limiting half the throughput. And that's purely because of the slot. And like I said, there's 30 quid saving here. But then we go over onto the CPUs, the 12500T, which is what I chose. And like I said, these basically, they're basically a match, the 5600, right? For 85 quid. So you save, even though you're saving 30 quid over on the platform, between the motherboard and the RAM, going at AM4, you save 30 quid. But then 16 quid of that gets knocked off. 15 quid of that gets knocked off because of the freaking price of the CPU. So you're literally saving like 15, 20 quid going AM4 and DDR4, and you're basically limiting and locking your platform moving forwards, meaning that the upgrade that is inevitable eventually happens sooner because the platform will be held back. We'll go into other aspects of that afterwards, but I'm going to go straight through the CPUs first so that you can see the price differences between their performant counterparts and themselves, so you can see why I've chosen what I chose. So at the 12500T, I've chose the 12500T because obviously you're on that platform, DDR5, everything else is there, but you're locked out to that 65 watts, which obviously shows here, because that loss here is just purely because of that power restriction on the 12500T. Now, the next CPU up that I chose was the 12400F. Its competitor is the 5600X. So we're still on the AM4 12th gen decision. So there's still that £30 difference, right? And this one here is £82. So as you can see here, the 12400F and the 5600X are almost identical in single core and multi-core performance. They are almost identical because the 12400F isn't limited by that 65 watt limit that the 12500T is, so it can push its cores for as long as it wants, essentially. So these two CPUs are pretty much a match, 96% and 98%. There's barely nothing, so they're going to literally perform almost identical. So a 5600X is definitely a good match for the 12400F. So 5600X, where are you? I get like CPU blind looking at this stuff. There it is. 5600X. £95 up against 82. So we're back in that same situation where it's costing it's costing an extra 15 quid for the CPU in that socket. So you're still only saving £15 going AM4, but you're also limiting your system. You see, the 12th gen, as I said, it supports everything that is modern right now. Right now, the golden standard and everything that has just literally in the last couple of years come out, 12th gen supports that. AM4 doesn't, which means it will always be limited by that. It will always be limited by the fact that it's on DDR4. It's always going to be limited by the fact that the PCIe lanes are Gen 4. Whereas on 12th gen, you've got Gen 5 PCIe lanes, you've got DDR5. It's just a more forward-thinking platform. And because it is newer stuff, that platform's going to last you a little bit longer. But when you do upgrade to, say, AM5, for example, when you get some money, you only need the motherboard and the CPU. Whereas if you were on AM4, you would need the motherboard, the CPU, and the RAM. And to be fair, DDR5 is actually pretty decent priced at the moment. Doesn't mean it's going to stay like that. So for me, I think the savings probably still on 12th gen. It's got a closer upgrade path to AM5 than AM4 has. It sounds crazy, but genuinely it has. And you're still saving on the CPUs here. So next CPU, 12600KF, 120 quid, right? And the 12600KF's neighbor, its red counterpart, is the 7600X. So we're over on AM5 now. So the difference is the RAM, everything else is going to be the same. The only difference between AM5 and 12th gen in terms of hardware is the motherboard and the CPU. The coolers work on both. Everything else is interchangeable. It's just the motherboard and the CPU that are different between the two. So these two are almost an identical match, let's be honest. It's got a little bit more single core over here, a little bit more multi-core. They're almost identical on multi-core, and the single core, it's lagging. You're not going to see more than 8 FPS at 100. in that sort of scenario. I've seen these really do reflect quite well into gaming, if you're curious. As long as you use your brain, this 7600X is probably going to be better in certain games, especially titles like PlayStation titles, for example. For like the PS5, if you take it to think about it, the PS5 and the Xbox Series X, they both use the same hardware. However, the Series X has more cores but a slower clock speed, whereas on the PS5, the base one, we're not talking about the Pro, on the PS5 it's got higher clock speeds but a few less cores on their GPU. So it's fairly safe to establish that PlayStation titles especially are going to work better on single core performance and clock speeds than they are on multi-core, because it's designed for that that layout of the architecture rather than the Xbox side. And then when you get an Xbox side of the architecture, you're going to notice that multi-cores are going to be able to push better because of the way it's laid out. That's the only real difference on the console side. I mean, any game coming that is designed on the console side is going to have a leg up on the AMD side of things. It's all down to how long the developers have been given to optimize a title is going to say how well Nvidia and Intel work with it, because everything is already designed for the AMD architecture, be it GPU and CPU. It might be the older architecture, but it's basically it's got more in common with the AMD desktop components than it has with Intel and Nvidia. However, that doesn't change the performance stats, and it doesn't change anything here. These two CPUs are a match, right? So 120 quid over here for this one. We'll go into the platform in a second, but let me just get the 7600X. 140 quid. So you're already spending 20 quid more for the AMD CPU at this level. So over on the motherboards, we've got this one here, 109 pounds, reduced down because of obvious reasons. 13th and 14th gen, I'm looking at you. But we as gamers and we as tech enthusiasts get to take advantage of this situation. But AMD fanboys just want to ignore the situation because they don't like the fact that Intel is the better option at the moment. And this is the situation that has arisen. The exact same motherboard. They're the same. The only difference actually is over on the AMD side, right? They're literally the same printing and everything on it. The only difference is over on the AMD side, there is only 3 M.2 support on this one. So Intel actually gives you an extra M.2 slot, and there's 30 quid saving there. So even at this level, at the 12600K KF level, you are literally saving £50 going with Intel on the 12600KF. Now, I used this for a couple of builds, but one specifically was the £680 build. So at 680 quid, a 3060 Ti. Yeah, 3060 Ti is here showing up at 185, 190 quid, right? And then the one that I chose was the EVGA consistency. This is the GPU that I chose. So 50 quid off that. So we're looking at 155 quid, right? So if we've got to knock 50 quid off that, 155 quid, I'm going to put 150 in. So we've got a little bit of a buffer. So we're looking at 6600s, or as I said, a 2070. So how much performance are we losing? How much overall performance in our system are we losing for the next year or so because we chose to go AM5? Because someone said, oh, you shouldn't ever go 12 to, you shouldn't get Intel, you shouldn't do that. Because an AMD fanboy said, you shouldn't do that, you shouldn't do that. You got pushed into going AM5 and spend an extra 50 quid. So you haven't got that extra 50 quid in your GPU margin. So should we have a look, see how much performance that decision got you for the next couple of years? But don't worry. It means that when you upgrade in a couple of years, you don't need to buy a motherboard. It saves you 100 quid in a couple of years. But I understand that this is what you're going to have to live with for the next couple of years until that point. Do you understand why this is a good deal now, Coffee? So, yeah, knocking that 50 quid off knocks 30%, almost 30%. Almost 30% off this price point. Right? Knocking that 30 quid off. Almost 50%, almost 30%. That's a big performance hit for what is a budget system, and you're trying to get the best performance out of your rig. This is why I've made the decisions that I have. But anyways, we'll go up to the last CPU in question. 12700K. I'd just like to point out that 12900KS for 210 quid is freaking insane. So 12700K. This is the last. Oh no, that's the 700. You want the KF. So 12700KF, 145 quid. Its comparison, as you can see here, is the 7700X. They are almost identical. There's a little bit more single core performance on that 7700X, so there are some single core clock speed loving games that 7700X is gonna show a slight improvement at, but we're talking like 5 FPS at 100. That's about it. Like there's barely anything in these two CPUs. They're both as strong as each other. So how much is the 7700X? Now don't forget, I'm using used prices here. These are not new prices. These are used part prices. So I'm giving both sides the best option here. But they've both got 5 years warranty and stuff. So 180 quid. 145 quid. So the difference is what, 65 quid? With the 30 quid more that you're spending on the platform. And then another 35 quid here. So it's like 65, 70 quid. So if we go back to the GPUs, the 3070 was the one in question, which was 210 quid. So you're knocking 65, 70 quid. You're knocking straight back down to this 2070. So we're going to have a look at, see how much of an impact that decision makes at that level, shall we? So at a 3070, if we have to knock off 65, 70 quid off the 3070's price of £210, if we've got to knock that off so that we can go AM5 because some AMD fanboy has like persuaded our little naive brain into thinking that this decision is not a very good one because Intel bad. So I mean, get a grip. Anyway, we're knocking down to a 2070. How much performance do you think we lose going down to a 2070? The 2070 is 63% of the GPU. There's 40% of the performance for the next couple of years has been fluttered away because Intel bad. Do you know what I mean? Get a grip. Right, anyway, back to your comments in question. Like, so as you can see, I literally tailored this to price to performance because my system would be giving you a 3070 at this price point, whereas your system wouldn't be able to do that because you'll have knocked all of your money into the CPU and the platform. So you'd be stuck on a 2070. Well, actually, not a 2070, would you? You would have probably got the 6600 because you're an AMD fanboy. So you're stuck at even at best case, if you're lucky, you might find that 6600 XT. I did see that right at the same price. So you're only don't worry, you're only 33% slower. You're only losing a third of the performance of your platform by going your choice. So for me, as I said, the options that I've made, the prices that I've made them, are performance based. Price to performance. Lowest price, highest performance. This is how this works, right? Low, high. See, the problem with the used space in the GPU market is because AMD is the underdog because they're not as popular. There is not as many used cards in AMD's lineup available, readily available, not in the same numbers, and because there's less of them, they seem to gain or keep a premium. Whereas when there's multiple of something, stores like this drop the price on them. Like this is at this price because they've got a few of them. This will probably knock up to 155 quid once they've sold a bunch of them and they're down in numbers, but they've got a few of them. And then you're talking about, oh, save money. Well, when you want to upgrade, look, these will give you like 90 odd quid for one. So anyway, moving on. So you put a list together based on warranty and not price to performance. No, this is definitely price to performance. The warranty is just part of it, and like I said, the list is tailored for people who are not necessarily full-on tech gurus, but they want the best. They want to give their kids the best that they can for the money that they've got. So they're either trying to save on the money on the performance, so they're not paying 1,500 quid for a system when you can get it for £1,000 and get the same performance. This is that's what this list is attached to, and the used parts come with a 5-year warranty. The fact that this CPU can fail on you in 3 years and you can walk into the store and they'll just swap you for another one, or give you credit note to the value of that CPU at that given moment. This bit, not this bit, this bit. And then you can just go spend it on what you want. That is the whole point of the freaking warranty. If you don't see the advantages of having that there, you're insane. And the thing is, you're only going to get this CPU any cheaper by haggling it down. You might get it for another 20 quid cheaper if you're haggling it off without the warranty. So pay the 20 quid and get the warranty. Why the fuck not? Jesus. And obviously with this store you can chop and change. And like I said, I've got this here. And I've said before, anyone spending 1,100 quid or more should be building an AM5 platform. There's no other choice at that point. But between 5,500... between 550 and 1,000, 12th gen just literally owns that section. Anything under 550 quid, you should really be looking at like full systems that are used, like a used full system, you know. It doesn't matter necessarily what's in there. You can go AM4 and stuff when you're down there, because that point is just like, get the system with the best specs for the money that you've got to spend. Don't go on Amazon and buy like some crappy fucking pre-built for 450 quid. It's almost never a good idea. In the UK, UCEX. Just have a look at their systems. They do have full PCs in here as well. Some of them, unfortunately, are, unless they're OEM ones, like, you know, like a HP or Dell, you know, the Victus or something like that. Unless it's something like that, they'll send those. But a lot of the custom stuff, you have to go pick them up from whichever store they are. So it's a bit sort of up and down, like. But Facebook Marketplace, places like that. So if you're spending under 550 quid, that's where you want to be looking. But you want to be trying to get as best specs as possible. This list was designed literally to make it life easier for people, and to just completely ignore this whole fanboy bullshit and just literally grab the best value for money. Like, literally putting an AM5 rig together in these price points almost across the board seems to have literally reduced everything down to worse. Like, there is literally nothing here that performs better, right? But you said from the 5700X3D and up, right? Okay, so this is the raw performance of the CPU between the two, 12700K, KF. It's the same, pretty much the same thing. The only difference is an iGPU. The KF doesn't have it, so it can actually push its clocks a bit harder because there's a bit more headroom in thermals. Anyways, as you can see, in raw performance, the 12700K walks all over the 5700X3D. However, in gaming, they're very, very similar. Like, very, very similar. I could literally just go through different games and, like, sometimes Intel takes it. Other times, it's very, very close. Other times, they're almost identical. You know, like, and occasionally you might get a slight chase from the 5700X3D. Okay, so that's the CPU you were like, this is golden standard for base level, good to go gaming. So the 12700K literally matches it almost across the board. So let's have a look, see how much a 5700X3D is, shall we? We need to have a look on AM4, so we'll go back here. 5700X3D. Sure, it's going to be like super duper cheap because you said that's the best base level. It's on DDR4, so it's already not better than the DDR5 system with PCIe Gen 5 over on the 12th gen. So there must be something that it's gaining, because it's not gaining in raw horsepower and it's not gaining in gaming performance. So can you explain to me why this hold on, they've not got them in stock, but when they are in stock they're £215. They haven't got a 5800X3D in stock, but when they are in stock they're 335 quid, right? Can I just take you over? Remember, this is identical gaming performance and far worse in every other way than a 12700K, 12700KF, right? Literally, I've just shown you. Literal performance, the multi-core, 12700K destroys it. Single core, 12700K destroys it. Gaming performance, that cache helps that fucking CPU out big time, doesn't it? Because there's 2% on this game. Ooh, it switched over once we went 4K, but sort of weird overhead. Anyway, ooh, you get a little bit of a lead in Forza. Most like that cache. Cyberpunk, oh, it's gone back the other way. Oh look, they're identical. So basically, what you're saying is this is the golden standard of what is good performance to carry you forwards in CPU. So identical gaming performance, but better in every other way. This is 215 quid. This is 145, and we're already spending another 30 quid on top of the system. So if you were going to go 5700X3D, you could be comfortable in saying you could get one for like 200 quid if you're lucky. So you're not going to have the warranty, but if that makes you happy, you go that way. I'll get this for less money, have more money to spend on a GPU, and have a better system. It's completely up to you. And the goalpost moving by you, Coffee, is hilarious, because you start ranting and raving, and then I point out that 12th gen is actually literally physically cheaper, and you were like, ooh, £70 or £70 more for an upgrade path for 2+ gens is not bad. Like that. In all seriousness, this level of performance is probably going to carry you through those generations. Like, you don't need to upgrade every generation like you used to back in day. It's just not. It's not necessary. So that is me basically pointing out that you're just wrong. I understand why, but I just don't get like why you would punish other people or a stranger just to push someone into a platform because you like the people that make the platform. I don't give a crap whether the CPU is Intel or AMD or fucking Mr. Bobby's own fucking brand. I don't give a fuck. If it gives the same performance or better for less money, I'm going to recommend it. And unfortunately, at this price point, at the moment, 12th gen just trumps everything, because the platform literally has everything that is modern. Everything that is modern at the moment can be plugged into the 12th gen platform and it'll work at its full speed. Whereas on AM4, everything's going to be limited. On AM5, yes, you get that same support. And yes, in 2 to 3 years, or maybe 4 or 5 years, you don't need to buy another motherboard. You could just upgrade your CPU, but have a miserable time now because you've had to fucking take 30% of the performance off your GPU just to get by. So you're literally limiting someone's performance right now just because AMD. Like, that's the only reason. There is no reason to choose any of these AM5 chips at this price point. The advantage with 12th gen is there's more of the hardware that can go with you, so you only actually have to buy a CPU and a motherboard in a few years. So it's going to cost you maybe 100 quid odd more in a few years. But to be honest, with places like CEX, you can have that knocked off with the CPU and do exchanging and stuff. Like I said, there's trade-in vouchers right this very moment. If you took them a 12700 KF, they'll give you £91 in trade-in vouchers, and then you could maybe go over onto a AM5 and be like, well, that 90 odd quid, I can knock that off the top of, like, say, a 7800X3D. Now it's only 200 quid, and by that point it'll be even cheaper. And this is a nice sizable chunk of an upgrade from a 12700 KF. Whereas going to a 7700X, which is practically the same, but it's going to give you a little bit of extra occasionally in games. There's no point, for the sake of what, 65, 70 quid. Why? That's the whole point. Why? This list was literally tailored, give you price to performance, and you're like, oh no, you just tailored it around a warranty. No, I have chosen a warranty path so that all of the components that go into the system have a level of protection to them. Why wouldn't you choose to have something with a 5-year warranty? Like, why would you not choose to do that? Like, the fact that, and with CEX, like I said, thing break, take CEX give exchange or credit for value. That is how it works. There's no complicated bullshit fucking sending off, like you fucking sending off and crossing your fingers and stuff. You literally take it into one of their stores, they'll run a test on it, they'll tell you to come back in like freaking half hour or something, and you go back with your little fucking ticket, and they'll be like, yeah, it's broken, what do you want to do? We've got one in stock if you want to take that one. That's how it works. Like, that's why I suggest this as an option. Like, the reason I've chosen what I've chosen is purely because they're the best options at those price points. That's why I've chosen. They just happen to be Nvidia, because in the used market there are more Nvidia cards, which means the price on the used market come down because there are more cards available. AMD's cards just don't seem to move, and then they end up being well overpriced for their performance bracket. So why would I choose the slower, more expensive AMD cards in this scenario? Why would I do that? Just because AMD. So that's why the cards are choice. Because at the minute in the used market, the 3060 Ti, the 3070 and the 3080 10 gig, if you're lucky, you can find 12 gig for roughly around the same sort of money if you're lucky. They're mostly more expensive though. But those three cards are literally just absolutely killer in their price points in the used market at the moment. And 12th gen Intel CPUs are absolutely astonishing at their performance point in the used market at the moment, and in the New York market, to be honest. But in the used market, they're really cheap, and the motherboards are really cheap. You've just seen, this is literally, it's got four DDR5 slots, it's got PCIe Gen 5, it's got 4 M.2 slots. There's literally not much more that you need out of a motherboard, and it's only 110 quid. That is why I've chosen Intel as a platform for this bracket. No other reason. It is just the best performance for the price, with the most forward thinking when it comes to upgrade path. All you have to do with this is swap out the motherboard and CPU. Instead of, if I'd gone AM4, you have to swap out everything. If I'd have gone AM5, I would have had to go with a cheaper GPU, because it wouldn't have fit the bracket, which would have dropped the performance of the system for the next year or so. For me, that's not a valid sacrifice. So I'm sorry, but you're wrong. And to everyone else, if you've enjoyed the video, thanks for coming. But yeah, coffee. Maybe you should wake up and smell the fucking coffee, eh? See you in the next one. Love you, bye.
Like and subscribe. Thank you.